Hi, I am Muskan and I am a GATE qualified counseling psychologist and educator. So, today we are going to do our very first topic of the free classes, which is hypothesis testing. Now, let us begin by understanding what is hypothesis. So, hypothesis is basically a tentative prediction or explanation. Basically, you can say that we are just making a prediction which we will want to prove further on in future. Now, as psychology students, we know that there are different variables, for example, or different psychological attributes that we study, such as self-esteem, social support. We also study different personality traits as well. So, in hypothesis, we take upon two variables, which can be any variable that I am interested in researching upon, and I can make a tentative statement or I can just make a prediction regarding their relationship. Okay, so let us take an example. So, I have taken self-esteem and social support as my two variables that I am interested in studying in, and I want to explore their relationship. So in a hypothesis, I will state that what kind of relationship will they both have. So I am saying that there is a positive relationship between self-esteem and social support. So basically this is a hypothetical statement that I will confirm further on by using various psychometric tests. I would use various parametric or non-parametric tests accordingly. So now let us understand what is hypothesis and how we should write a hypothesis. So it should define a systematic relationship between an independent as well as dependent variable, right? So herein, as I have taken two variables, social support and self-esteem. So I am saying that social support will have an impact on self-esteem of a particular individual. So herein, social support is my independent variable and self-esteem is my dependent variable. So this particular statement is determining a systematic relationship between my independent and my dependent variable. So how we should write a hypothesis, how we should write a perfect hypothetical statement. Now the statement should be simple, specific and conceptually clear. So here in this statement I have written there is a positive relationship between self-esteem and social support. This is pretty simple, very direct, very conceptually clear what it is trying to say. Then it should be capable of verification. Now whatever statement I am writing, it should be written in such a way that I can further on test it. Now I know there are a lot of tools, inventory, questionnaires available for self-esteem. There are certain questionnaires, inventories available for social support as well. I know this particular hypothesis that I have made is testable. I have not just made a random hypothesis wherein I have written that this is the relationship that I want to conduct. I have written a statement which can be tested, which can be verified. Then it should be related to the existing body of knowledge. Now we know that we do review of literature. Whatever studies which have been already done upon the relationship between self-esteem and social support, I will go ahead and I will look throughout all the studies which are stating about the relationship between social support and self-esteem. They could be stating a positive relationship, negative relationship, direct, indirect, whatever sort of relationship, but I will make up my study or I will make up my hypothesis on the basis of existing knowledge, existing review of literature I will do, and then I will make my hypothetical statement. Then it should be operationalized. That is, it should be expressed in terms of measurement. Now we know that there are a lot of self-esteem scales. There is one Rosenberg self-esteem scale which is there. There are certain scales for social support as well. So we know that both of these variables are measurable. We can measure both of these variables. So this is a basic example of hypothesis, how hypothesis should be written. It should be simple, it should be clear, it should be testable, it should be based upon the existing body of knowledge, whatever body of, like whatever variables, whatever two variables that I have chosen, it should be related to the existing body. I would review all the studies which are available, not all the studies but main studies that are required, and then I would operationalize the variables that I have chosen, which means that I can measure those variables. I will express them how they can be measured. Then in psychology there are majorly two types of hypothesis that we use: null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So null hypothesis is majorly known as hypothesis of no significance or hypothesis of no significant difference. It is denoted by HO. So basically when I will begin by writing my hypothesis, I will make two hypotheses: null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So in null hypothesis I will write that these variables have no significant relationship. So I will write there is no relationship between self-esteem and social support. This is my null hypothesis. So null hypothesis is basically stating that there is no relationship which is significant between these two variables. Now moving ahead with alternate hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is also known as researcher's hypothesis. So in this particular hypothesis we will state that there is a relationship, or there is what kind of relationship. So herein I am stating that there is a relationship between self-esteem and social support. So these are two major type of hypothesis that we use. We denote our null hypothesis by H0 and our alternate hypothesis by H1 or HA. Now our alternate hypotheses are further on divided into two types. Now there are certain hypotheses which, so there are certain hypotheses, certain alternate hypotheses which just tell us that there is a relationship. That yes, there is a relationship. They are not stating that there is a positive relationship or negative relationship. But there are other kind of alternate hypotheses which tell us that there would be a positive relationship between the variables, or there would be a negative relationship between the variable. So I can write these statements accordingly. So there is a relationship between self-esteem and social support. This type of hypothesis wherein I am not telling about the direction of the result or of the effect. It is known as non-directional. That I have not told that the direction of significance would be positive or negative. But in this other type of hypothesis, I am stating that there would be either a positive relationship or there would be either a negative relationship. So this type of hypothesis is a directional hypothesis. Let us also understand this by the normal probability curve attached to these particular type of hypothesis. Let me change my slide. Okay. between these two normal probability curve, this curve basically tells us about the two-tailed hypothesis, and this is about one-tailed hypothesis. So in a two-tailed hypothesis or in a non-directional hypothesis, I have not determined the side of effect. So all of this area, this white area, is the area of effect. That the effect can be negative or positive. My alternate hypothesis will still be correct. That yes, there is an effect, there is a relationship, and these areas which are colored, these are known as critical region or error region. So in a two-tailed hypothesis, obviously if the effect is on positive side as well as on negative side, so the critical region would also be on both the sides. Now if you guys have already done some level of statistical, or if you have read some sort of psychological research, you must know that we establish a level of significance. While studying our hypothesis, while establishing our hypothesis, we also establish the level of significance that we are going to take. In psychology, there are majorly these three significance levels which are used. So these significance level basically tells us about the error reason that we are allowing our researcher to make. So in this particular significance level, the researcher would only be allowed to make a 5% error, which means that my study is 95% correct, and there are just 5% chances that it cannot be generalized to the normal population or it is not correct. In 0.01 significance level, there is just 1% chance of error which we give to the researcher, which means my study is 99% correct. And in this particular type of significance level, there is just 0.1% chance that we are allowing error chance, or the chance of mistake we are allowing our researcher to make. So herein there are 99.9% chance that our study would be significant. So herein the critical region is there, or the error region is there, or it is dependent upon the level of significance that we have chosen. It could be 0.05, 0.01, 0.001. Now let us look at the one-tailed or the directional hypothesis normal probability curve. In this probability curve, there could be, like, the curve could also be made in another sense also, that the critical region is on the negative side, but we are taking positive as an example. So let us focus on this particular normal probability curve. So here in the area of effect would only be this, because I am saying that there is just a positive relationship. Like if we look at this normal probability curve, under this there are z-score or standard scores which are written. So I am just my alternate hypothesis in the second type of probability curve, my alternate hypothesis is saying that there is a positive relationship between whatever variables I have chosen. So the effect region would lie only in one side, and so will the critical region. So this was basically that there are different type of hypotheses that we state and how we state those hypotheses. Now there are certain steps in hypothesis testing. Now I would collect data regarding whatever variables that I have chosen. I will conduct whatever questionnaire, like we will proceed with the same example that my two variables were self-esteem and social support. So I have collected the data of the same variables in my through my sample. Then I will state the hypothesis. I will state a alternate null hypothesis and I will state a alternate hypothesis. After that, whatever parametric or non-parametric test which will be applicable to my hypothesis, I will conduct that test. For example, Z test. I am giving an example of Z test, that I am just comparing my mean with the population. Now we will calculate the we will put on the formula for Z test, and then I would make a statistical decision. Now how statistical decision is made? We know that for different tests there are different tables which are available. So there is a different test for Z, there is different Z table, T test table, F table, all of these tables are there. So I would see the table value and I would see the calculated value. The calculated value is what I got after putting in the formula, and the table value is something which I saw or which I used from the table which is already there, which is basically the standard scores which have already been established in the statistical areas. And after that I will choose that I will see if my tabulated data is less than or it is equal to the obtained value. So my tabulated value that I have attained with the table is less than or equal to my tabulated value, then I would accept my null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is the hypothesis of no significance, which states that there is no significant relationship. And if my tabulated value is less than my calculated value, which means my calculated value, whatever I have gained after putting in the numbers or putting in the values in my formula, it is more than the value that I have obtained from table, then I will reject the null hypothesis, which means obviously I would accept the alternate hypothesis. So what happens here is let me go to the beginning slide. Yes, so herein what we will do, either one of these hypotheses will be correct, either null hypothesis or either alternate hypothesis. So if one will be rejected, other will be accepted, and vice versa. So in this manner we would select by making the statistical decision. If my tabulated value is less or more, we will establish a particular decision and we will select that we have to reject the null hypothesis or we don't have to reject the null hypothesis. So obviously if we don't reject the null hypothesis, it is accepted, which means that there was no relationship or there was no significant difference between our means, or there was no relationship between the variables. But if we reject the null hypothesis, which means that there was a significant relationship between my variables, or there was significant difference in the mean values. So these are the steps. If you are given certain question of any type, or if you are doing any research, you will state the hypothesis, whatever alternate and null hypothesis according to the variables that you have. After establishing the null and alternate hypothesis, you will set up a significance level that you would want to choose a 0.05 level, 0.01 level or 0.001 level. After that, you will calculate whatever score you have to calculate. like whatever test you have applied, T test, Z test, whatever test you have applied. After that, we will make the statistical decision from the table, and this is basically how we choose. This is the main thing. So this was the basic crux of hypothesis testing, and I hope you all were able to follow through and you all were able to gain some insights through this class. So thank you so much for joining.